No, I know, I've got the right time, I think.
Do you travel around or you just stay in one place?
Yeah, I just get a car and that's what's going to drive.
That'd be fun. Good time to learn how to hold that.
Yeah, so it's basically like that. Quite a journey to get you there.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock this evening. I'd like to welcome you to our Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, September 15th. I welcome all our staff, our guests in attendance today, either in person or virtually, as well as those who will view these proceedings at a later date. I'm Councillor Richard Novak, and I am joined today by my colleagues from my far left, Mayor McNeil Smith, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Rintoul, and on my right, Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, and Councillor Garnett. First, I would like to acknowledge that we're privileged to live, work, and play on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Wasanic Nations, Pakwachan, Sartlip, Sakum, Saut, and Malahat, whose stewardship of these lands and waters from time immemorial have allowed us to flourish here today. There are no late items that I've seen, so I'd like a motion to approve the agenda as published. Thank you, Councillor. Second, Mayor McNeil Smith. Any discussion, concerns? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you so much. We'll now come to the public participation period of this meeting. And public participation is open for anyone in the gallery to speak to any item on the agenda, with the exception of items in number 7 of the agenda that has its own public participation period. In this case, it would be 7A. So before we get to that, I'll ask if anybody would like to speak to the Assembly on any other topic on the agenda. I'll ask for a second time. Does anybody wish to speak today? Third and final time, if anybody wishes to speak. And seeing none, I will close public participation period and look for now on item 5, a motion to approve the minutes of our last Committee of the Whole meeting. Councillor Duck, Mayor McNeil Smith, any corrections, additions, comments, concerns? None. We'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. We have nothing on item 6 today, and so we can move right away to item 7A. And that first item is a development permit application, number DP 100853, and development variance permit application number DV 100377 for 9824 3rd Street to allow a 4-story mixed-use commercial residential development. And we will ask for a presentation from the applicant, Mr. Alan Lowe.
There you go.
Thank you.
All of these are different. Anyways, Chair Novak, Mayor McNeil Smith, members of council, my name's Alan Lowe. I'm the architect for this project, and my client is here also with me. This is right down the street here on 3rd, right between the Meridian and the Cameo. So we have a 6-story building next to us, as well as a 5-story building. There was a 6-story building that had a development permit, I think about seven years ago, but we are proposing a 4-story building here that meets the C1 commercial zone, but we're asking for a few variances. This is a 6,000 square foot site, so it's a very small site. It's half the size of the Meridian and 1/3 of the size of the Cameo. And I am going to, let's see. Which one do I use, by the way?
We'll use me.
Use you. Okay, thank you. hired help, very expensive hired help, but thank you very much. Next slide, please. Okay, we are in the downtown zone, and the downtown zone calls for mixed use, commercial and retail spaces on the ground floor, residential above, and it will enhance that downtown area pedestrian-oriented streets and safety. Next slide, please. What we're proposing is a 4-story building, commercial on the ground floor, 8 parking stalls in the rear, 1 will be accessible, 9 dwelling units above on 3 floors, with adaptable units on each floor. And we're looking at that 3-meter wide right-of-way along the back, which will create that mid-block walkway once the other buildings are built towards Beacon, so that you would have a mid-block walkway all the way from City Hall, actually, to Beacon. Next slide, please. As you can see here on the site plan, there's that right-of-way that connects the right-of-way that you have at the Cameo, and there's a right-of-way along the Meridian that will have to be built as well. You see the building is right out along to 3rd Avenue, which gives you your street frontage. We have a driveway going to the back where our parking is, and we're asking for a few variances. One variance is the width of that driveway. There's only 8 parking stalls, so you're not going to really have a lot of traffic going back and forth and conflicting. And we're already asking for a site coverage for hard landscaping already over and above what's required within the zone. So by reducing the size and the width of our driveway, it will reduce that slightly. Zones are actually created so that it allows for the various uses and various densities all along the various areas. It's a tool, but it's not a great tool for smaller sites because it's the same zone for the larger sites. So when you have the smaller sites, you almost have to cater and fine-tune those zones through variances to make developments happen. Next slide, please. So we're asking for the width of the driveway reduced from 5.5 meters to 3.6 meters, increasing the site coverage for parking from 50% to 62.7, and increasing small car stalls from 30% to 40%. Next, please. Next, please. That's just the same slide. 3 units on each floor, adaptable units on each floor, and they're all larger units. They're all over 1,000 square feet. So they're not these smaller condominium units that you're seeing being built today. Next. So comparison of the C1 zone to what we're proposing, 4 stories. The FSR is within the FSR. We're within the heights, and we're within the setbacks, and we have that rear setback of 3 meters, which allows for that right of way. Next slide. Just some images of what you're going to see. Next slide, please. Here you could see the Cameo in front on the right-hand side, our building, and the Meridian further up the street. What we're also including is a boulevard tree, and we're also asking to put the 6 bike rack on 3rd Street so that it's in front of the building. Next slide, please. Just a image looking towards City Hall. Next slide. Here's a slide showing the streetscape. You see the 6-story Cameo building, the 5-story Meridian, and our building tucked in between the 2. Next slide. Just some elevations. Next slide, please. And next, this is one of the elevations that is right on the property line. So we'll have some concrete along the property line. We're going to have different colors, and we have a recessed area that allows for some windows. Next slide, please. This is the other side. Next slide. Just an image of the building. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, we've also superimposed our building with the Meridian building, showing where their windows are, where our windows are, and we have worked with the Strata Council at the Meridian building to change some things around that would make it better for them as well. We removed a Juliet balcony, which they didn't want there. We just put a window there, and we're telling them that we would paint the side of the building as long as they allow us on their property to do the painting. And so we've been working things out so that it works for both people. Next slide, please. Next slide. And then again, we also have the floor plan of the Cameo building and where we are and where our windows are and the relationship. All of our windows are at least 2.5, 3 meters away from the property line, and all the windows will meet the building code requirements. Next slide, please. And as you can see, as we go up above the second story of the Cameo building, there are no windows facing our light well, so there will be no issues of privacy. Next slide, please. That's my presentation. Any questions and discussion, I'm available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe. Before we go to questions, we'll have public participation, and then we'll ask for the staff report before we open things up to questions for both staff and the proponent. So right now, we're going to look for anybody from the gallery who would like to speak to this item. We'll ask for a second time if anybody would like to speak to this item. And a third time. And seeing no one, we'll close public participation. And now we'll ask staff, Ms. Verhagen, for a report on this project.
Thank you. Good evening. As was indicated, this is an application for a development permit and a development variance permit for a new 4-story mixed-use building. There are 3 variances being requested, as was indicated by the proponent. One to reduce the width of the drive aisle, one to increase the maximum percentage of the lot that can be taken up with parking area, and one to increase the maximum percentage of small car spaces on the lot. Otherwise, it conforms to the zoning bylaw. Yeah, happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verhagen. We'll now go to questions from committee. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Chair. And first, if you wouldn't mind, I'll have questions for the proponent first, and then I'll have a few for staff. So if you could come into the microphone, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, sorry, you'll need your mic again. So you mentioned, and it's great, you had the conversation with the strata from the Meridian. So were there any conversations had with the strata to the north at the Cameo?
There has not been, no.
Okay. In the letter that that we got from the strata at Meridian, they mentioned some things that they like to see. So it's really hard to tell from the pictures. It looks like it, but I just want to confirm, is there a garage door in there?
Yes, there is.
Okay, perfect. And that's, I'm assuming, just past the recycling garage?
Yes, it's tucked in slightly, but there is a garage.
Perfect. And the fence at the back that you have abutting this statutory right away, can you tell me approximately how tall that is?
It's at least 6 feet right now.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Oh, great, answering all my questions. You mentioned in your letter that if there was no statutory right away, it seems you're intimating that you probably could get past the small car. You would be able to meet the requirements?
We could have actually gone right to the rear property line, which gives us an extra 10 feet, yeah. Which allows my small car stalls to be a bit longer, and then they become regular car stalls.
So, and with regard to the statutory right away, is that something that you'll be finishing as part of your project?
Yes, it will.
Perfect. Okay.
We will actually finish it exactly like what the Cameo has, so that it continues.
Great. That's all I have for you. Appreciate it. And just if I could if I may, Chair, through to staff, the 390 square foot commercial space, and it's indicated in the proponent's letter, if you take a bathroom into consideration, it's 340 square feet. And they talked about a one-person consulting firm. Does staff have any concerns about the size of that and what may or may not be able to go in there in terms of, would it be difficult to find, do you think, someone to rent that space or lease that space, and given its proximity to downtown, having a vacant space there, are there any concerns around that?
Through the chair to Councillor Garnett, no, I think the policies in the the official community plan speak to a variety of types and sizes of commercial spaces. A small space may be a great opportunity for a new business to start up in a small location off of Beacon Avenue. Also, the staff report does include a discussion about the conflict between providing the required number of parking spaces and promoting a viable commercial center in the downtown, and that economic development of wanting to have new commercial floor space, but being restricted by the parking bylaw. And this is a great exhibit of they're trying their best to meet the parking requirements, but there's only so much space on this property. So it's a good example of how the bylaws impact a small property, so.
Great, thank you. With regards to the actual going from a given the parameters of the lot, I understand, but going to a one-way drive aisle as opposed to two, and the proponent mentions in her letter that chances of conflict are minimal, but they're not impossible. So I just wonder if on the odd time where somebody's entering and somebody's exiting at the same time, if it were to happen, we clearly don't want somebody who's entering backing onto a sidewalk or a street. So is there the space inside maneuvering wise for a vehicle who's exiting to be able to back up to allow another car to come in?
Yeah, again, through the chair, this is something we talked about with the applicant. They did provide a turning template, which was shown in their presentation, so I think there would be space for a car to just make that slight maneuver back. Also, with only 8 parking spaces in the lot, it's pretty low volume traffic. There are a couple other instances in Sydney's downtown where the same variance has been granted. One is I believe it's called the Quartet Building on 4th Street between just south of Beacon Avenue, north of Bevan. It's about a 4.5-story building. There's some ground floor commercial spaces and then residential up above. A variance was granted here as well to reduce the width of the drive aisle. And that was more units upstairs. I'd say upwards of 20 units, residential units upstairs. But again, because it's a relatively short driveway distance, council approved that variance, and I think there may have been at least one other in the same situation on these single properties in the downtown.
Right, that's great, thank you. The last question I have is it's reference to statutory right away, and Cameo has already done theirs. Their proponents are speaking to doing the same, and then it reads to Royal Bank, and then the space goes between Royal Bank and the other commercial spaces there. I mean, I wasn't around when the Meridian we obtained the statutory right away. So, is there a time frame so that those will all be linked up together, or is that something on the horizon that's a distant thing? Because going out there the other day, like clearly that's not you don't want people walking on that stretch. If you have the Meridian, it's very uneven and rocky and weedy. And once these 2 pieces are completed, one's completed and the second's completed, I'm just wondering, in terms of the overall fit to Beacon, as was mentioned before, is that something that's on the near horizon for knowledge of the community, I guess?
Sure, thank you. Again, through the chair. So that statutory right-of-way at the back of the Meridian, which I think the address is 9818 3rd Street. It's the 5-story building just south of this site. That was taken. I think there may be wording in that document that it will be built out and connected when there's things for it to connect to.
Oh, okay.
So it's not fenced off right now. I went and took a look at it today just to refresh my memory, and it's gravel right now. It does have a bit of a slope to it, so it would need to be leveled out and paved at the point when the town is ready to connect it through all the way. I mean, this property being built out will help. It will connect through to the Cameo to the north, the building with the movie theater in it. But there's still no registered stat right-of-way across the back of the property right on Beacon. It's not the Royal Bank property, it's just the one beside that. I think it has a barber shop and a small gift shop in it.
Yep.
So that would be something that we'd have to pursue in the future. And these right-of-ways, the original direction for this came from the previous official community plan.
Yep. So
that mid-block connection was the goal in there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. Lowe, the presenter. Mr. Lowe, thank you for the presentation. You're obviously very familiar with the project, because I found it a little bit of a whirlwind in spots, and I'm going to circle back to a couple of those, if you don't mind, with the same question, essentially. First off, this lot to me always sort of felt, in recent years at least, like it was orphaned, in part because of its size and unique location, and I'm sure it's been a challenge to try and develop successfully. So it's good to see something coming forward on this site, in my opinion. If the north and south elevations just come to your mind, you made some comments with respect to a dialogue at Meridian, and I'm assuming the same sort of intent took place on the north side with your design on Cameo. Was it your statement essentially that the windows from your project are offset to the windows adjacent on either of those buildings? Is that the intent for privacy?
Yes.
Sorry, just to make that.
Yes, with the Cameo, there are no windows facing where we have our area where we have windows from the third story up. They did put 2 windows on the second story, and at that point, we've actually raised the wall 6 feet so that there is privacy and nobody's looking into each other.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Likewise, I guess with the balconies on the ends, do your balconies on either sides of the building, the same sort of intent was there in the architecture to ensure privacy on those balcony spaces?
Yes, there's only, I think, 1 deck on the second floor between our building and the Meridian that would almost share a wall. And so we've actually raised that wall 6 feet so that we've got the privacy. And the other decks are further away from the various properties to the north and south so that there are no privacy issues.
Yeah, thank you. And with respect to the location of the garbage and recycling room, is it intended or envisioned that garbage and recycling will be handled by a private contractor who's going to access that space at appropriate hours to not see congestion in terms of the narrow drive aisle?
Yeah, it is a small building, so they'll probably use the smaller plastic buckets as opposed to a big BFI container. That probably won't even fit within the area. And sometimes they may have to come more often than once a week to deal with it, but that'll be something that the Strata Council will have to look at.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? Mayor McNeil-Smith?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Lowe, for the presentation. The question either to yourself or staff with regards to the bicycle parking. So we understand from the report that there's a requirement for 8 Class 1 bicycle parking, and that is being provided, and then requirement for 6 Class 2, and those spaces are being paid for in lieu, which conforms. But we see in the drawing that there's bicycle parking inside behind the foyer, and then you made reference to having 6 bicycle stalls outside. Can you just speak to the
Yes.
Class 1, Class 2?
Definitely. We have adequate bicycle parking for our residents. So these are visitor parking spaces that we're looking at, that we're having discussions with, I guess, staff and yourselves. Because in your bylaws, it does allow us to purchase or to pay $100 per bike stall if we can't place it on our site. We did have 3 bike stalls on our site, but it's inside the gated area and it's very difficult for a visitor to go to. And we felt that it would probably be better to actually place a 6 bike stall right in front of our building on 3rd. And if you allow us to do that, then we would not have to pay the $600 or whatever, I think, Allison, and we could put a bike stall there instead? Would that work?
That would be a detail that we would look into through the building permit process and the off-site design with a civil engineer. So that'd be a conversation with the engineering staff, but there's probably value in fitting that bike rack in right on the frontage here.
Because if you look at the frontage, there is a scallop there right now, and I think it probably fits 1 car or possibly 2. With our driveway crossing, there won't be adequate space for even 1 car. And so we're going to be putting a boulevard tree on the enhanced sidewalk area, and there will be space there for a 6 bike stall rack right in front, and it would not impede the pedestrians walking along the sidewalk.
No, thank you for the answer, and that you're considering having additional parking for bicycle parking for customers. My second question, if we could turn to the slide that shows the the west elevation, please. There's a couple, and there's one in between, one in particular. Yeah, that one. So, back one, or, yes, that one, thank you. So, having watched the Meridian under construction and be open for many years now, their back has concrete up to about 5 feet or 6 feet. And then it has some supporting pillars. And then they left the areas in between open. So basically from your railing to the ceiling, they left open. And in recent years, they have covered that with a screen mesh, with a metal mesh. And so, you know, eventually when this completes, that is developments on 3rd Avenue and developments on 4th Avenue, we could see this pathway, this 10-foot pathway, perhaps being more enclosed. I gather that the Meridian chose to add that mesh screen for security, you know, sometime in. And given your building is, you know, partly blocked from the west by the physical building of Anavets, I think it's about half of your lot or a portion thereof. Just a thought that, you know, with the experience, having watched the Meridian go through that process, for your consideration. But not a requirement.
No, and I agree with you. At the end of the day, that fence may actually go to the underside of the slab there, only because of security. We have a security gate in the front, and people can climb anywhere these days, unfortunately. So that might be a good change to make.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Question to Mr. Lowe. Thank you for the presentation. I'm interested in the adaptable units. So you mentioned that, is my understanding correct that there would be 4 adaptable units?
3, one on each floor.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that is that slightly higher than
I believe
what
it
is
is.
required?
Yes, I believe we need 2. Is it, Allison?
That's right.
Yes.
And any particular reason why you went for 3? Are you targeting are you anticipating seniors or people with mobility issues?
It was just easier to keep that stack of units the same. So instead of only creating 2 and then making the
Right.
other unit above it
Okay.
change,
Okay.
we felt that we might as well put 3 in so that it would work with the floor plan.
Okay. And any particular audience that you're targeting these for, retired people or families, or what's been in your mind as
Well,
you've developed the proposal?
You know, because they're all over 1,000 square feet, I think that there's going to be a large demand for these units, because at least they'll fit people's furniture. And the other thing here is people are looking for 3 bedrooms because of families and children as well. So at the end of the day, it's going to be what the market will dictate. And I think that because many of the other condos that are being built these days are a lot smaller, there will be a demand.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you.
And then just a question through you, Chair, to staff. Just on the accessible parking again, so I know we had some email on this previously. And so what I'm understanding from the report is that developers can use pay in lieu towards accessible parking stalls. And that's what's proposed in this particular development. Just confirming my understanding of that.
Yes, so there's no requirements in the parking bylaw that says that the type A or B accessible spaces cannot be paid for in lieu and that they must be provided. The bylaw doesn't say that. So with this one, they're required to provide 10 parking spaces. They're providing 8 and paying in lieu for 2, and that meets the bylaw requirements.
Okay, so even though there's a section in the bylaw that talks about, you know, we need to, even when there's pay in lieu, the original number of required off-street parking spaces shall be used to calculate the number of accessible parking spaces.
Yep,
So what
so
you're
that-
saying is that we use that calculation to calculate how many are required, but that they can still, choose pay in lieu for the accessible spaces.
That's right, the staff followed the bylaw regulation, we used the total number of parking spaces required for the development to determine the required number of type A and type B accessible spaces. Type A spaces are the ones that are wider,
Yeah.
type B spaces are the standard size with the painted access aisle beside them to make them wider.
Okay,
So we followed the bylaw and applied it consistently there as we do for all the development applications.
yeah,
So what they're proposing does meet the bylaw. The parking
Okay.
bylaw doesn't say that you cannot pay in lieu for an accessible space. It looks like the presenter might have something to
yeah,
add.
okay. I have a concern about that, but that's, a different discussion perhaps.
Can I just add something there?
Yeah,
Just like zoning bylaws, parking bylaws, they're for, I guess, any size project. And we would require the three handicap accessible stalls or disabled stalls, whether we had 50 units or we had 9 units, because of how the bylaw works. So because we only have 9 units, it probably, the disabled stalls will probably not be used as much, because we would be looking at 1/3 of the parking stalls that we're providing, or more than 1/3 of the parking stalls that we're providing to be disabled stalls, that's why.
Yeah.
And so that's why we went that route.
yeah, okay,
Okay.
thanks, thanks for that, and, that's all for me, Tim.
Anybody else? I've got just one question for developer, if you don't mind. Given the nature of the projects on either side of you, north and south of you, they're both either 5 or 6 story, they both have basements, or at least underground parking, I believe. Why would you choose in that space not to follow suit and build something that was of a similar type of construction? Why would you not put in underground parking or at least a basement, and perhaps take advantage of the fact that you could put 5 or possibly 6 stories there?
Okay, a lot of questions there, but I'll get to the first one first. The Meridian, they have surface parking. They don't have underground parking. So one of their concerns was, if we were going to go under, are we going to undermine their building? Okay, so I believe the Cameo may have a basement. Okay. Number 2, because our site is only 6,000 square feet, it is so small that you can't get a ramp down and turn around in order to effectively put underground parking, and then you lose all of the space on the ground floor that you would have had for parking because you had your ramp going down. So trying to put a underground parking floor in the underground area would actually not be very worthwhile, and you could probably only fit 3 parking stalls down there, and then you would lose all the parking stalls on the surface.
Thank you. Councillor Duck,
I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
if there are no other questions, please proceed.
I so move that development permit application number DP 100853 and development variance permit application number DV 100377 at 9824 3rd Street be forwarded to the Advisory Planning Commission for further review and comment.
Second.
Thank you. Would you like to motivate,
Nothing to add.
Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and Councillor Rintoul made a really good point. When I was looking at this, we often talk about orphan lots and residential developments, and this is an orphan lot in a commercial area. So, and that was the first thought that came to my mind when I looked at it. And then I started thinking, this is like developer Tetris. Like, I went out there and looked at them, like, how are you, the pieces and how you put them in? And it must have been incredibly challenging. It's a very challenging lot. I was often wondered if we were ever actually going to get a proposal for this. I understand the other side of it is, if you go higher, then we're talking about an OCP amendment, public hearings, the whole shebang. Not only that, then we're looking at a parking variance, because you'd have more units and you'd have to have more parking spaces, which you already can't meet. So I understand where you're coming from. I appreciate you working with One Strat. I'm not sure what happened to the north, but that was a really good letter from there, and then some really good suggestions. Like one of the better letters I've actually seen written by somebody in the community about a development, and they approached it in a nice, tactful manner. Yeah, it's difficult. I appreciate some of the things you've done. I can't wait to hear what APC has to say about it. And I think that they'll have they always have some interesting takes, so it'd be good to hear them and get feedback. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor O'Keefe?
Thank you. I'll support this going to APC. I mean, if this was any other lot, I might have reservations about lot coverage and setbacks and that sort of thing. But as colleagues have said, this is a very unique piece of property, very tricky to fit in anything there. So I'm a little bit more lenient and understanding of the developer's challenges, and I'll be curious to see what APC has to say. In regards to the accessible spaces, I'm a little disappointed that the proposal is to reduce it to one. I wasn't aware that our bylaw provided for that. I recall us having discussions about this, and my recollection was that accessible spots would not be subject to pay in lieu. Having said that, that's certainly exactly how the bylaw seems to read. So maybe that's something to be dealt with at a future time. But I guess what my plea to the developer would be is that, having at least two spots, one for the commercial unit, one for the residents. What we hear from our community, which I'm sure you know, is an older demographic. So there's more likely to be people who would use those stalls, even though it is only 9 units. Also, it's hard for persons with disabilities to find parking on the street when they go to a business. So this commercial entity, whatever it may be, it would be nice to have a spot that would be accessible maybe for them and for the people inside. So I'll just leave it at that, and I'll look forward to seeing what APC comes forward with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thank you. I think everyone addressed all the points that I would have asked earlier. I think this actually was a lot that when the Cameo was being built, there had been some concern about it being an orphan lot at that time. So it was good to see something actually come forward about this for this lot. I thought I'd comment just with regards to the potential for the bicycle spaces because of the on-street parking spot being a smaller size, and knowing that the surrounding businesses are the brew pubs and the theater. I think that if bicycle parking is put in there, it may be very much in demand for other businesses besides just the one that is built there. And to that end, knowing it's a small business, I have no idea what the economics are about. This is why I did not ask a question about it, but one of the things when we were talking about in our active transportation plan was that one of the needs might actually be for like a commercial space for bike storage, particularly in the downtown. We have a lot of large groups of cyclists that stop for some beers out on the patios nearby. Maybe that's something to look at in an extra small space, but I just thought I would put that out there before I went to APC and while the developers are here.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? We'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Carries. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Lowe, presenters. And we'll now go to item 8 on the agenda, and that is a report on the results of our 2025 Citizen Satisfaction Survey. There's a presentation by Catherine Naus from Ipsos and a report from Ms. Judson, our Manager of Communications. I'm not sure who's going first. Is there a... Thank you.
Thank you. So today we're reviewing the results of the 2025 Citizen Satisfaction Survey. This is the first survey of its kind in Sydney in 12 years. While the results were quite positive overall, there are also areas for improvement that we can take away and consider more closely. The survey, as you noted, was conducted and analyzed by Ipsos, and we have Public Relations Director Catherine Knaus here today to present the results. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess we'll get the presentation from Ms. Knaus, and then we can talk about questions from committee.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen, so if you can let me know when you see the presentation, that would be great. Looks okay?
We don't see anything yet. There it is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
now you're good.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to present the results of the town's 2025 Citizen Satisfaction Survey. My name is Catherine Knaus. I'm a director with Ipsos, part of Ipsos's public affairs team, with a main focus on municipal government research. So today's presentation is an overview of some of the main findings coming out of the survey, and a more detailed report has been provided separately to town staff. There is a lot of information to get through today, and I'll move through it as quickly as I can. I just ask if you can hold any questions or comments until the end, and there'll be time for discussion once I've done the presentation. The primary objective of the survey is to understand how residents feel about municipal services and priorities. And within here, the survey looked at a wide range of topics covering both perceptions of the community of Sydney as well as the town itself. This is the first citizen satisfaction survey the town has conducted in quite a few years, so it serves as a baseline measurement that may be repeated at regular interviews to monitor shifts in public sentiment over time. So the next time that you're looking at doing this survey, you can compare those results to this baseline measure to understand how attitudes and priorities are changing, identify any new or emerging issues, and monitor perceptions of the town's performance. The survey was conducted online, so Ipsos mailed online survey invitations to all available residential addresses in Sydney. Each invitation included a survey link and a unique password, so residents could access the survey by going to that link and entering their unique password. The password was good to complete for completion of a single survey only, so once the survey was completed, that ID expired, and the intention there is to prevent someone from going in and completing the survey multiple times. Everyone was asked a series of upfront screening questions to confirm they're 18 years of age or older, are residents of the town of Sydney, and then anyone who lived in a household with members who work for the town of Sydney, either as staff or elected official, were also excluded from the research. The survey was available to be completed in the spring between April 9th and 30th. In all, a total of 1,156 residents completed the survey. That's a 17.7 response rate, which is very good for this type of survey. I was very happy to see that. The final data was then weighted by gender and age to ensure the characteristics of the sample match that of the actual population in Sydney according to the 2021 census data. And overall results based on that sample size of 1,156 are accurate to within plus or minus 2.9%, 19 times out of 20. So I just want to start with a few survey highlights, and then we'll get into the more detailed results. But first and foremost, key survey measures are positive, and we see this consistently throughout the survey, and I'll just share a few examples. 98% of residents rate the overall quality of life in Sydney as good. 93% are satisfied with the overall level and quality of services. 86% believe they get good value for their taxes. 85% are satisfied with the town's customer service overall, and 86% are satisfied with municipal government as a whole. That's not to say there's still issues that residents would like to see get more attention. There's still opportunities for improvement, but the overall positive tone, overall positive results indicates the survey results should be viewed in a positive context overall. And I think it's important to keep that in the back of our head as we go through the rest of the results. In addition to the majority of residents being satisfied with services overall, we also looked at satisfaction with individual services, and here we also see generally high satisfaction ratings at all. So of the 12 evaluated services, 6 receive an overall satisfaction score higher than 90%, with the overall highest rating going to fire services. And there you have 99% of residents saying they're satisfied with fire services. Another 3 services receive a satisfaction score higher than 80%. The 3 services that are rated relatively lower would be bylaw enforcement and land use and community planning. You have 76% and 71% of residents saying they're satisfied with both of those. And then overall lowest satisfaction would be with traffic management and improving the flow of traffic. And in this case, only 58% of residents say they're satisfied. I mentioned that perceptions of quality of life are high overall. 98% of residents rate the quality of life in Sydney as good overall. When we ask residents how they feel the quality of life has changed over the past 3 years, we do get a bit more of a mixed view. And here we actually have just under 3 in 10 saying that they feel the quality of life has worsened over the past 3 years, citing reasons around concerns around growth and development, traffic congestion, and poverty and homelessness. So while there's a perception that quality of life is good, it's not quite as good as it once was. When we ask residents what they feel are the most important issues facing the community, we see similar themes coming up here. So the top issues would be related to transportation, social issues, and growth and development. And I'll dive into what each of those includes further into the presentation, but just to briefly give you a sense of what that is, the 2 main transportation issues are concerns around parking and traffic congestion. Social issues is really about housing and poverty and homelessness. And growth and development is really about the feeling that there's too much development happening in the community. Switching gears, looking at the financial side of things, when we ask residents how they feel about balancing taxation and service delivery levels, there's a clear preference for increasing taxes over cutting services. So residents really don't want to see their services cut. It's a sign of how much they value the services that the town provides, and they would be willing to pay more to have those maintained or improved. And then lastly, overall attitudes towards the town are positive, particularly regarding inclusivity, accountability, financial responsibility, and open government. And here we presented residents with a series of statements about the town and asked how much they agreed or disagreed with each one. We had the majority of residents agreeing that the town's meeting all of these criteria. The one that scores a little bit lower is public engagement. Here we had nearly 1/4 of residents saying disagreeing with the statement. It just indicates there's this appetite to be engaged and provide their feedback on town services and issues. So I'm just gonna dive into the detailed results, starting with quality of life, how residents view quality of life in Sydney overall. You can see perceptions are overwhelmingly positive. We have 98% of residents rating the quality of life good overall, and that includes more than half, 56% saying very good and 42% saying good. Only 2% rate the quality of life poorly. So you can see there's a strong sense that the quality of life in Sydney is really quite good today. Like I said, when we ask how residents feel the quality of life has changed over the past 3 years, so we get a little bit more of a mixed view. So here we have just under half, 47% saying they feel the quality of life has stayed the same. Among those noticing a change, you get more residents saying the quality of life has worsened than improved. So 28% feel it's worsened versus 18% saying improved. This isn't surprising to me. I do a lot of these types of surveys where we ask these kind of questions. And in virtually every case nowadays, you do get the feeling, there's this feeling that quality of life is worsening. It's not quite as good as it once was. In a lot of cases, it's even quite a bit higher than what we're seeing here. Sometimes we even get over half of residents feeling the quality of life has worsened. And I think that just speaks to some of the challenges that are facing people today. To dig a little bit deeper, we asked an open-ended question. So among those who felt the quality of life had improved, why do they say that? The number one reason is economic development, more local business, mentioned by 23%, but other reasons would be the just general feeling that there's good amenities and services at 14%, there's more activities and things to do at 9%, and growth and development garners 7% of mentions. On the flip side, when we ask residents why they feel the quality of life had worsened, the main issue here is growth and development, 25%. Another 17% mentioned traffic and congestion, and 15% mentioned poverty and homelessness. We also see some mentions of affordability, that expensive cost of living at 7%, but maybe not as high as you would necessarily expect. We see this come up, tends to be one of the top issues, top mentions in a lot of the surveys that we conduct when we ask this follow-up question. So it certainly plays a role, but not to the extent that we necessarily might expect. There's other issues that are coming into play here, and those would be growth, traffic and poverty, and homelessness. And then you also see mentions of parking as well. Next up is important local issues. This is actually the first question in the survey, and we intentionally ask it before any other questions to avoid potentially biasing people's answers with some of the other survey questions or their answers as we go through the survey. So it's the first one that we ask residents in the survey. It is open-ended, so residents aren't prompted in their responses. They're free to say whatever is on their mind. And then we code them into what we call here nets, which is a combination of 2 or more mentions that cover a specific theme. So as you can see, transportation is the #1 issue mentioned by 38% of residents. The 2 main transportation-related concerns are parking and traffic congestion, but we also see some mentions around the conditions of streets and roads, pedestrian walkways and crosswalks, bike lanes, and public transit. That's what's comprising that transportation net. In second place sits social issues. 34% of residents mentioned some kind of social related issues. Here, that's primarily comprised of concerns around housing availability and affordability, as well as poverty and homelessness. There's a few mentions around seniors issues, but for the most part, that social issues is comprised of those two considerations, housing and poverty and homelessness. Growth and development sits in third at 20%. We do see a variety of mentions here, but like I mentioned earlier, a lot of them are related to the perception that there is too much development. So some specific mentions would be overdevelopment, the number of high rises and high density housing, population growth, municipal zoning and planning, the impact of growth and development on neighborhood character, and the feeling that there's kind of pace of development growing too fast. The only other one I'll mention here is crime and public safety, mentioned by 10% of residents, and that includes mentions of community safety, speed limits and road safety, community and public safety, and policing and law enforcement, sorry. Next up is town services. Looking at overall satisfaction with services, you can see majority of residents are satisfied. 93% say they're satisfied with the overall level and quality of services provided by the town. That includes 47% saying very satisfied and 46% saying somewhat satisfied. Only 7% say they're not satisfied. We also looked at satisfaction with 12 specific services, and I know there's a lot of information on this slide, so I'll just try to break it down for you a little bit. But essentially what you're seeing here is a percentage saying they're very satisfied or somewhat satisfied, and the percent at the end is a total satisfied. So of the 12 services, the overall most satisfactory is fire services, with virtually all residents, 99% are saying they're satisfied, including 82% saying very satisfied. But you also see strong satisfaction scores for library services at 95%, the maintenance of water, sewer, and storm drains at 95%, police services 92%, parks, trails, and green spaces 92%, and garbage, kitchen organics, and yard waste collection at 91%. There's 3 other services that are rated satisfactory by more than 8 in 10 residents, and those are environmental protection, maintenance, cleaning, and upgrading of streets and sidewalks, and communication with residents. The 3 that are rated relatively lower would be bylaw enforcement at 76%, land use and community planning at 71%, and then traffic management and improving the flow of traffic is only satisfactory to 58% of residents. And this is consistent with what we see elsewhere in the survey, where those concerns around traffic congestion pop up as the reasons why quality of life is worsened, one of the most important issues facing the community. That's echoed here when we look at satisfaction with services as well. We also asked about the importance of each of these services, and as you can see, all of the services are important to people. Really speaks to how much they value the services that are provided. There's quite a few that are important to more than 9 in 10 residents. I won't go through everything here, but just to point out a few. 2 most important overall would be maintenance of water, sewer, and storm drains at 99%, and fire services at 98%. Both of those also receive quite high, very important scores as well. The two at the bottom that are rated a little bit lower would be bylaw enforcement at 88% and library services at 77%, but both of those are still important to more than 3/4 of residents. Next up is what we call an action grid, and here's when we look at plot total importance versus total satisfaction to give a sense of the town's strengths and opportunities for improvement. It's a relative type of analysis, so there's always going to be strengths and there's always going to be opportunities for improvement. They're divided into one of these 4 quadrants based on the average importance and satisfaction rating. So to the right are what we call the strengths. So these are rated relatively high in satisfaction. The top right are what we call the primary strengths, which are rated high in both importance and satisfaction. So you can see the town has a number of primary strengths. These would be fire services, maintenance of water, sewer, and storm drains, parks, trails, and green spaces, police services, and garbage, kitchen, organics, and yard waste collection. The secondary strengths are in the lower right. So these are also rated higher in importance, but a little bit lower, higher in satisfaction, but a little bit lower in importance. So these would be environmental protection and library services. To the left are those opportunities, and we always recommend focusing mostly in that top left. So these are primary opportunities that are rated relatively high in importance, but lower in satisfaction. So these would be communication with residents, land use, and community planning. The 2 other ones I'll point out there are maintenance, cleaning, and upgrading of streets and sidewalks. This actually sits on the border of being a strength versus an opportunity. Just given the importance of it to residents, anything that you can do to nudge that into the strength category would be a value. And then traffic management and improving the flow of traffic sits on the border there of being a primary versus a secondary opportunity. So it's an opportunity regardless, it's just the emphasis that is placed on it. But keep in mind, it's still important to 93% of residents. So this is really one that I would suggest focusing on as well. And in the bottom left are the secondary opportunities rated lower in both importance and satisfaction. There's only one that sits here, and that's bylaw enforcement. So next up, we're going to look at financial planning, looking at perceptions of value for taxes. 86% of residents rate the value for taxes positively. A little bit, I'm going to say more muted here. You have 27% saying very good value compared to 59% saying fairly good value. So overall, there is this feeling there is good value, but it's more in that fairly good value. 11% of residents rate the value for taxes poorly. When we look at preferences for balancing taxation and service delivery levels, you can see there's a clear preference for increasing taxes over cutting services. So overall, you have 62% of residents saying they would prefer the town to increase taxes versus 26% saying cutting services. When you dig a little bit deeper, though, you can really see it's about maintaining services at current levels. So you have 43% of residents opting for a tax increase to maintain those services, but less of an appetite for increasing taxes to enhance or expand services. You only have 18% of residents selecting that. And similarly, when we look at the percentage that what makes up that cutting services bucket, it's really about cutting services to maintain the current tax level, 20% versus 6% saying cutting services to reduce taxes. Next up is communications and customer service. This was an open-ended question asking residents what types of information they're interested in receiving from the town. Number 1 mention would be around community planning, land use, new developments. 21% of residents say they're interested in receiving this type of information. Not surprising, given mentions around growth and development and how much of an interest that is to residents. 10% are interested in receiving just general municipal news, updates, decisions that the town has made, and 9% mention wanting to hear more about taxes, property taxes, budget, how the town is spending money. I think it's also of note that you have 36% of residents unable to identify any specific mentions, so that would be the 1% saying nothing and 35% saying don't know, indicating they really don't have any pressing information needs from the town. There's nothing that comes to mind off the top of their head. As for how residents would prefer to receive information from the town, there's a clear preference for electronic communications. 46% of residents mention email. Mail sits in second at 24%, followed closely by newsletter, pamphlet, flyer, brochure at 22%. Less frequently mentioned would be social media, 12%, the town website, 11%, and newspaper, 10%. I don't spend much time in this presentation going through demographic differences. That information is included in the main report, but I will just point out here, as you might expect, there are some differences by age. So while emails, the leading response across all age groups, mentions are particularly high among those under the age of 65. Those under the age of 65 are also much more likely to mention social media, whereas those who are 65 or older are more likely to mention newspaper. We looked at how useful residents evaluate different communication channels used by the town. Most useful would be temporary Town of Sydney signs and posters, with 81% of residents saying those are useful overall. In second place, it's the town website. 77% of residents say they find this useful. Town Talk newsletter follows closely behind at 73%. And then 68% of residents say they find it useful to get information from local news outlets. Rated a little bit lower, we have less than half, 42% of residents saying they find Facebook posts from the Town of Sydney useful, and 42% saying they found council meetings, agendas, and minutes useful as well. Again, there's some age differences here. Just quickly point out social media is going to be more useful among younger residents than it is among older residents. Nearly 6 in 10, 59%, say they have contacted or dealt with the Town of Sydney in the past 12 months. So the majority of residents are having contact with the town. And among these residents, most are satisfied with the service that has been provided. So 85% say they're satisfied with the overall service provided, including 62% saying very satisfied. And then when we look at different elements of the town's customer service, all of these are rated quite highly as well. There's nothing here that really stands out as needing attention. One service highlight would be staff's courteousness, with 93% of residents saying they're satisfied in this regard, including 76% saying very satisfied. So that's some strong satisfaction ratings for staff courteousness, but we also see very positive results for staff's helpfulness, the ease of reaching staff, staff's knowledge, the speed and timeliness of service, and staff's effort to resolve their issue as well. Lastly, we look at perceptions of the Town of Sydney, and here we're looking at satisfaction with municipal governance and leadership. 86% of residents say they're satisfied with the town's municipal government, including staff and council and staff as a whole. Satisfaction is a little bit higher for staff than it is for council, so 91% versus 78%. That's not unusual for me to see. This is another one we ask in a lot of communities. Staff does tend to come up higher than council. In this case, staff looks particularly high to me. You have over half, 51% of residents saying they're very satisfied. And then lastly, attitudes towards the Town of Sydney. Here is where we presented that series of statements and asked residents to what extent they agreed or disagreed with each one. A few things to point out here. For all of these statements, the majority of residents agree. What we're also seeing is a relatively high proportion of don't know responses, anywhere from 11% to 19%. So that does indicate there is a bit of a lack of familiarity with some of these. People may not be familiar enough to answer one way or the other. But for the most part, the proportion that actually disagrees with each of these statements is quite low. So overall, most positive perceptions around the town fosters a community that is inclusive and accepting of all. We have 78% of residents agreeing with this. The town is accountable to the community for leadership and good governance. 71% agree. 68% agree that the town does the best it can with the money available. 67% agree the town practices open and accessible government. Where we're getting a little bit lower is the town provides citizens with opportunities to have meaningful input into decision making. Here we only have 59% of residents agreeing. Nearly one quarter, 24% of residents disagree. This is where I was saying there is that appetite to be consulted and provide their input. Residents do want to be engaged on these type of issues. So that wraps up the presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Judson, and thank you, Ms. Knaus, for your presentation. Just out of curiosity, when mailing to 6,545 homes, Is there any way to distinguish if there's one resident living in that home or multiple residents living in that home?
No, we're not able to distinguish that. So when we mail out the survey invitation, it's available for one member of the household to complete the survey. With that
Does
code
it
that was
does it
provided.
specifically say in the survey that only one person? I realize you have unique codes, but I'm just thinking in terms of a couple, or they sit down, one person puts his information in, and the two of them sit there and basically answer the questions together. Because I could see myself and my wife doing that quite easily. So you might actually be accessing more than 1,156 people. Is there any way to account for that possibility?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, no. I believe in the invitations that go out, it does say only one member of the household could complete the survey. But it's very possible, like you said, you could have a couple sitting down to do it together and just inputting one response. But we unfortunately have no way of tracking that.
Perfect, thank you. I was curious, interested to see that only 42% of people thought that council meetings and agendas were useful communication channels. And I thought to myself, I don't know if this is just a societal norm shift. 12 years ago or more, we did the last survey. It'd be interesting to see what these numbers look like back then. And just in terms of the fact that agenda has staff reports, council meetings, you have all this discussion, questions and answers. It's like a bevy of information that people have access to, and 30% don't use it. So I was wondering, Ipsos has been doing this kind of research for a very long time. I'm not sure how long you've been doing it, but I was just wondering if it's more of a factor of people need their information now. They got to have it now. Everything's quick. You see that with emails, social media, all the rest of it. And so, and even if you did provide information, people don't want to spend a lot of time going too in depth into it. So that particular kind of communication is a lot more in depth, a lot more time consuming. Do you think that's more of a kind of a societal shift in the way people are accessing their information today?
Yeah, I think you make some good points. I think those council meetings, agendas, and minutes, like you said, have a lot of information, but for a lot of people who are time pressed, it's going to be difficult to make that a priority unless maybe there's a specific issue that they're interested in following along or getting feedback. But for someone who's kind of happy with the way everything is going, maybe making time to listen to a council meeting isn't kind of their number one choice. So there's when it comes to getting those more convenient ones that go out and reach them, and maybe it's just giving them some high level information about what's happening, or they just see it when they're out and about. I've been doing this a while as well, and I will say that's always one of the one that comes up lower, but you're absolutely right. There is that kind of more immediate, wanting to get everything immediate now, fast, maybe simplified a little bit, just getting that top of mind information across to people, where some of those other communication channels might be more effective.
Thank you. And if I may, Chair, through you to staff, I appreciate that people want to receive this information via email. Do we even have all the emails for every resident in Sydney? And how large of a project would that even begin to be?
No, we don't have residents' emails. What we have is a web page that's set up so that you can subscribe to different parts of our web page. And so if you want to get all our news releases as they come out, or if you're interested each time we create a project web page, you can get an email. And seeing this preference, I'm thinking that I probably need to do more to promote those opportunities. I try to mention them in social media posts, but it made me think maybe in Town Talk we can just highlight that you can get information this way. It's definitely given me food for thought. There's quite a bit of communications information here, and big changes from what we saw in 2013. Though we don't, it's been so long that it's not, and it was done in a different way. You could call home phones at that time, so different kind of survey. But I will say council agendas haven't been popular for a long time. They were 2% back in 2013 in terms of how many people preferred them as their information source. So I am thinking of highlighting that function on our website more, but also looking at whether there's an interest in receiving an e-newsletter which would come to your inbox and would change some of the ways that we send information out.
And Chair, I'd just add on to that, and with email, it is a user subscribe model, so the individual has to actually request to receive that.
Thank you.
That would add to the complexity of the issue. And just one last thing I want to touch on, just like You mentioned it was approximate cost was $28,000 to carry us out, and I believe we budgeted $30,000 for it. And going forward every 4 years, you're looking at the same sort of April timeframe, like so 2029-ish would be the next. I believe that's 4 years away from when this was done.
I hadn't thought about
That far ahead.
exactly what month it would
Yeah,
happen, but that is the idea. But I think more that it would happen the second year of a council term, so that
Right.
council, because they are giving feedback about that council, so there was some time for that council to establish a track record,
Yeah.
and also time for that council to make changes if they're necessary based on what they learned from the survey.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your work. Thank you, Ms. Knaus. Thank you, Chair.
Just for clarity, Chair, through you to Councillor, we would be targeting 2028, not 2029 for the next survey.
So I just, the report said every 4 years, so then it would be 4 years after that point, or that would be the target?
It'd be so we would try to be on a 4-year cycle, hitting the mid term of council.
So more towards the end of the second year and then every 4 years after.
Correct.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. You talked about a little bit, you touched on demographics. And in looking through the report, I saw some, what I thought was pretty significant differences in responses between 65 plus and 44 years and under. And I'm just wondering, do you see that, is that kind of a normal sort of thing that you see in these types of surveys in other communities? Or is it something unique to Sydney because we have an older demographic?
Yeah, it's not unusual to see age differences in the results. The age is one of the key demographic factors that we always look at analyzing the results by. They do tend to have different priorities, different experiences. So it is interesting to see how the results break out by the different age groups. I didn't go into it a lot in the presentation, just in the interest of time, but that information where there were significant differences, we have pointed them out in the report.
Okay, so in the larger report?
In the larger report, yeah. And if you are interested, I've also provided the detailed tables across tabs so you can see how the results break out by age for every question if you're interested.
Okay, well, I think that's really valuable to have. I mean, I've looked at some of it, and when you look at the the total percentage and think, oh, we're doing really good in this, but when you look at the demographics on some of the issues, there's a significant difference, like 20% sometimes difference between what younger people are thinking than what older people are thinking, and the different concerns they have. So I think it's useful for you to have provided that, and a good opportunity for us to look at, especially we are an older community and we want to attract younger people here, and so how we can use that information to accomplish those sorts of goals. So thank you for that. That's all for me.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. 2 questions, one through to staff and one through to the presenter. Ms. Knaus, in your report you discussed people seeking more public engagement. Did you get a sense of how they wanted that engagement to be brought forward? Is that other than the council meetings, which we have a huge attendance tonight at, but other means in which they want to be engaged?
Yeah, so that wasn't one of the questions that was included in the survey. We just really looked at perceptions of kind of the opportunities that the town provided. We didn't break it down to look at where there's demand for specific types of engagement. Certainly would be something to maybe flag for the next survey, if we can build out on that a little bit more and drill down to kind of see, well, how do people want to be consulted and engaged?
Thank you. And through to staff, if I may, Chair. We just had a question about the email contact, and obviously it's by positive notification because it has to permission based. Just drilling down through the town website, the only place it shows up where you can actually sign up for any of the different ones is under Town Talk. So someone has to know to go to Town Talk to find the email subscription, which gives you a number of options. And I'm wondering if we might want to bring that to a higher profile on the website, so that when you go to the master menu across the top, there's a notification tab that helps people seek this different information. And I'm assuming you can check all of them or some of them and pick the ones you want to do. And I'm wondering, based on this survey, if there's one that just, people want to stay informed, they would get, as you suggested, a general newsletter, be it Town Talk in an email format or whatever, or even council highlights as you put out regularly to media. It might be an idea that the more general application, rather than people picking a certain category they want to be informed about.
Yes, I'm definitely giving that some thought. There are more opportunities than that Town Talk page to subscribe. So at the end of a project, it'll say subscribe for updates. And you'll also see that if you're looking at jobs, those types of opportunities. What's tricky, but I think you're right that we could highlight that more on the homepage. I just think, like I mentioned earlier, overall I want people to be aware of these opportunities. And I'm hoping that as we shift to another platform for learning about developments, that people can also subscribe to that so they can hear about new developments in town. One thing that's tricky is that each time you trigger that, so people have subscribed, sometimes they decide they want to be subscribed to all of them, and then you'll send out Town Talk and someone will say, I was hoping for a really important email and this is quite disappointing, and then they'll unsubscribe. And so we find that sometimes when you let people subscribe to specifically what they want, they're less likely to unsubscribe than if they're going to get all these different pings from us. So it's a bit of a delicate balance, but definitely we can just profile that opportunity more.
Thank you. Fair enough. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Councillor O'Keefe? Well, before second-time speakers,
sorry.
maybe I'll ask, I have a couple of questions on process, I guess, more than anything. And to the presenter, Ms. Naus, on that area where we talked about specific services, for example, fire services, library, police, etc., were those categories predetermined on the survey, or were they selected by survey respondents?
So the survey was developed in consultation with staff. Those were the services that we decided to ask about in the survey, and then everyone was asked about all of those same services.
Thank you. And I assume then that it appears as a block or a grid on the web page with the ability to choose very satisfied, somewhat satisfied, et cetera, or not satisfied. And I'm wondering if there is any order bias. So what I mean by that is that the categories, for example, at the top of the list are going to get the greatest attention, and people think about them more thoroughly because they're the first ones they see on the page. And by the time you get to the 10th or 11th category, they're kind of tired of that, and they're just checking the first box that they see so they can get to the next page and see what the next part of the survey is. So my question is, would those items be randomized for each new survey respondent, or is that grid fixed with, for example, fire services always at the top of the list? And the corollary to that is, does that impact the validity of the survey?
Yeah, it's a great point, and you're right, it can have an impact. So I can say that all of the services are randomized. So there's not always going to be one that appears at the top. It's a random order, and that's built into the programming. So everyone's going to see a slightly different order. Great.
That's what I was hoping to hear, and I think that's terrific that you're able to do that, because that does eliminate bias. I'm done. Mayor McNeil-Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Noss, for the presentation. Just a quick search of some of the other surveys that you've done. I noticed City of Coquitlam calls it the Community Satisfaction Survey, City of Vancouver Civic Satisfaction. Their survey includes both residents and businesses. But what I noted was the frequency varies as well amongst the municipalities. Coquitlam, I think, was doing every year, and they've just recently gone to every 2 years. Vancouver was 2 years, but sometimes did it 2 years in a row. Just from your, from Ipso's large experience, is there a best practice in recommended in terms of frequency of survey?
We don't really make a recommendation one way or the other. It depends on like each individual case and how you're going to use the results. Some municipalities choose to do it every year. Some do it, I found in my experience, most frequently is every 2 years. But some choose to do it every 3 and every 4 years. So it really depends on, I always recommend looking at how you're going to use the results. Make sure you're leaving some time to implement any decisions or changes coming out from the survey results and giving people a chance to take note of those. And that's helpful to gauge changes between surveys to see if they're having an effect or not. Some people like to do it more frequently to keep a tab on things and really notice some of those changes as soon as they start to kind of take place. That can be helpful for issue tracking, or if there's certain things happening with services or whatnot in the community, doing it on a more frequent basis can help you notice any of those changes more frequently than doing it every 4 years.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Any other questions? Well, then I'll ask if, Councillor O'Keefe.
Thanks. Through you to staff this time. I'm just thinking about the, some of the comments about the no interest in our agendas and that sort of thing, but they still want communications and engagement. I think the council highlights that we're doing are great. I think I get the sense from this that the issue isn't so much lack of information. There's tons of it, right? But people don't have the time to be going through every single one of our agendas to figure out. So I think it's really appreciated when it's kind of curated to kind of guess. So I think that's good. The other takeaway for me is about our communications protocol generally in terms of like big projects or initiatives. And do we see ourselves perhaps taking another look at that in terms of, we often start initiatives or things like a year or 2 years ago, we gather all sorts of information and we're all plugged into that. And then in the last month or two, we bring forward, we publicize, here's what we're doing to the community. And then sometimes we get, well, we've had recent experience with that in the last couple of years with a couple things. And so how we might, do we see ourselves adjusting things a bit to kind of anticipate now that we know that people want to know more specific information about projects right in their neighborhood or things that are relevant to them?
Yes, a change that was made within the last 2 years is that now the communications section of each staff report does come through me, so I can put that lens on it and have more influence on that type of engagement. I will say there's a whole nother conversation I think that would have to happen in terms of council's appetite for more formal engagement processes. If we want to see that trigger being happening more often, that whether it's surveys or open houses, I think that would be like I said, a larger conversation. But the one thing that I'm always sort of keeping in mind is that we want to make sure when we engage the public that they're maybe it's an information session and then it's not such a concern, but you don't want to ever gather the public's input and take up their time if that input is unlikely to affect the outcome. And so I always think to maintain trust, we need to make sure it's never an empty gesture when you ask the public to give feedback or take a survey. That's something I'm cautious about, and I think maybe we'll start talking about that more as staff reports come forward and we're thinking about, is this open house, is this a survey? Because we know there's a real appetite to influence decisions.
Right, okay, good, thank you for that.
Any other questions? Well, Then I'll ask if somebody would like to read in the recommendation, please. Councillor Duck.
And I so move that council commit to undertaking a citizen satisfaction survey every 4 years at the midpoint of each council term to ensure these surveys are conducted regularly enough to accurately gauge changes in the community sentiment and help inform ongoing planning.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Garnett, thank you. Motivation, Councillor Duck?
Yeah, I think there's some valuable information gained from this survey, and especially as one of my colleagues said, in comparison to past ones, you start to see the trends. Council agendas being one, for example. And I think the staff are correct in putting it in the midterm of a council will really help to see how that council is progressing on their first 2 years and give some direction to the next 2 years. Thank you.
Councillor Garnett? I think anybody else? Councillor O'Keefe?
Yeah, I just, more for the public, I guess. For me, what I'm taking away from this and how I see incorporating it, the issues on traffic flow, congestion and parking, that's not surprising. We've heard that a lot in the past. I've lived here for 27 years, and I do know that there's more traffic and congestion. So that's something that I am taking away and looking at. How do we do something about that? I'm not convinced that we're maybe providing enough parking, and that's leading to more congestion, but that's a topic for another day. Social issues related to housing affordability, poverty and homelessness are things we haven't made a huge amount of progress, so that's something I'm gathering from this, hoisting in and looking forward to what we might do on that. And then as we've talked about the room for improvement and public engagement, it sounds like staff have got some good ideas on how to deal with that. So I think some of these things we maybe had inklings of before, but the value of the survey coming from the people is kind of gives some validation and areas for us to think about as we make our future decisions. So thank you for that.
Anybody else? We'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you to our presenter, Ms. Knaus.
Thank you.
And thank you to Ms. Judson for putting this all together and getting it in front of us. Thank you very much. I don't believe there is any other business, and so I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So
Councillor
moved.
Duck. Councillor Rintoul. Any opposed? None opposed. We're adjourned. Good.